My mom fattened us up as kids, then filmed our starvation for IG clout. When I cut contact and recovered in college, she tricked me into coming home and stabbed me with a syringe of illegal diet compounds. So I downloaded all her files and got her convicted, making sure she'd never profit from us again. My mom is the craziest beach I've ever met. When I was 9 and my sister Olivia was 10, she started this family bonding thing where we'd have these massive dinners every night. Mac and cheese, quadruple cheeseburger, extra greasy fries. And as if that wasn't bad enough, I later found out she was mixing weight gain powder into our pasta sauce too. Every morning she'd make us step on the scale, and I swear she'd get this creepy smile every time the number went up. By the time I turned 12, I was 190 pounds at 5 feet tall. Olivia was 13 and pushing 250. Up until this point, she had told us that cooking was her love language, and that's why she fed us so much. And I was still young enough to trust that my mom wanted the best for me, so I believed it. We were sitting around the table one day when she announced that we were doing a family health journey. Before me or Olivia could respond, she took out her phone and started filming us eating. We went from 4,500 calories a day to 800. You see, my mom was smart. She knew that the fatter we were before losing weight, the more views she would get. Her career of filming us took off almost instantly. Everything we did was a vlog. She'd even film us crying from hunger and frame it as an emotional breakthrough. I myself was always a little more rebellious than Olivia, so I snuck food when she wasn't looking and lost weight in a healthier way. Meanwhile, Olivia became mom's little doll. When she passed out during a workout video and lost 15 pounds that week from being hospitalized, mom bought her a MacBook and called her an inspiration. She literally threw a celebration dinner that Olivia couldn't eat for hitting 50,000 followers. And of course, she plastered photos of it all over social media. The caption read, "Look at my warrior daughter, nothing stops her." All while Olivia was still hooked to an IV drip. I tried everything I could to make her love me without destroying my body. I became her unpaid video editor, taught myself photography, grew her Instagram by 200,000 through hashtag strategies. But nothing mattered. Sweetie, I appreciate the help, but what would really help is if you'd start starving yourself like Olivia and stop ruining your progress, she'd say, even though I was literally eating 500 calories a day. And I did worry for Olivia a lot, but she was my older sister, so I always thought she had it under control. Until one day, when I came home to find her passed out on the bathroom floor with an empty bottle of laxatives beside her. I rushed over to check her pulse like we'd learned in science class. But right as my fingers touched her neck, she gently pushed me away. "Don't touch me. I'm so bloated today. Mom says if I can just lose 10 more pounds this week, we'll get a Netflix deal." That was the first time that I realized how brainwashed she was. After that, I gave in. I started taking the sketchy pills mom handed me that smelled like they were found in a sewage. Let her film me doing 2-hour cardio sessions on half a meal a day. Smiled when she posted before, after photos calling me her success story, even though I was seeing spots and couldn't remember my last period. Because maybe if I got sick enough, she'd care about me more than the views. Unfortunately, I was extremely wrong. And by the time senior year came around, I picked a school 2,000 miles away, blocked her on everything, and spent freshman year in therapy learning that food wasn't the enemy. And for the first time ever, I went to the gym for my health instead of my appearance. Fast forward 3 years later, and my mom called me from an unknown number begging me to come home for Thanksgiving. When I started hitting her with a wall of excuses, she told me Olivia was going through something and needed family. I should have known better, but I didn't. And the second I walked in, I saw cameras everywhere. Olivia looked like a skeleton with veneers, probably 90 pounds at 5 feet 7 inches. "How did you get effing fat again?" my mom said, pinching my arms. "You destroyed everything we built, you ungrateful pig." Before I could react, she grabbed a syringe from her purse and stabbed it into my thigh. "It's just B12, she exclaimed while injecting the whole thing. "You'll thank me when you're beautiful again." Olivia held me down, her bony hands surprisingly strong. "She's helping you," she kept repeating. "Why can't you see she's helping you?" Within minutes, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it would explode. Through my blurred vision, I could see my mom setting up ring lights while I convulsed on the floor, mumbling something about how she needed to document the breakthrough. I woke up in the hospital 2 days later. Apparently what she injected me with was some black market compound that shut down my kidneys. The doctor said if I had gotten there just 5 minutes later, I would be dead. They told me Olivia was the one to call the police. I was ready to make our mom pay. I gripped the hospital bed rails as the detective pulled out his notepad. My hands were still shaking from whatever mom had injected into me. Through the glass door, I could see her pacing the hallway, phone pressed to her ear. She was using that same fake concerned voice she'd perfected for her videos. The detective asked me to start from the beginning. I tried to explain about the injection, but the words came out slurred and jumbled. The kidney medication made everything foggy. The tired resident who'd been checking on me scribbled something on his clipboard. I caught a glimpse, patient agitated, in messy handwriting. Mom burst through the door before I could clarify. She rushed to my bedside, tears streaming down her face. The detective watched as she smoothed my hair back, playing the worried mother perfectly. She told him I had a history of self-harm, that I'd been struggling since leaving for college. Her voice shook exactly like it had the day Dad left us. The detective excused himself to make a call. Mom's mask dropped instantly. She leaned close, checking my IV bag. Her fingers traced the tubing like she was inspecting it. I tried to pull away, but the movement sent pain shooting through my side. A nurse came in with discharge papers. Mom intercepted her at the door, insisting she needed to take me home immediately to care for me properly. The nurse hesitated, glancing between us. I tried to sit up, to protest, but Mom was already signing forms. The social worker arrived next. She needed Mom's insurance information to approve Olivia's psychiatric hold extension. Mom's eyes lit up. She had leverage now. She told the social worker she'd provide everything needed, but first she had concerns about my mental state. I watched helplessly as mom spun her web. She mentioned my weight gain in college, my cutting off contact with family, my obsessive behavior around food. The social worker took notes, nodding sympathetically. Every word mom spoke reframed my story into something else entirely. The detective returned with questions about the syringe. Where was it now? Mom explained she'd disposed of it safely, as any responsible parent would with medical waste. She claimed it was just B12, that she'd bought it from a wellness shop to help with my obvious fatigue. The detective asked for the receipt. Mom promised to check her email. I forced myself to speak clearly. The words, "she tried to poison me," came out garbled, sounding more like rambling than an accusation. The detective's expression shifted from concern to something else. Doubt, maybe, or pity. Mom suggested I might be confused from the medication. She reminded everyone how traumatic this must be for me, seeing my sister hospitalized again. The detective closed his notepad. He'd follow up later, he said, when I was feeling better. An hour passed in a blur of tests and medications. The insurance company called about coverage limits. Mom took the call in the hallway, her voice carrying through the thin walls. She was negotiating, using terms I didn't understand. A nurse mentioned Olivia's evaluation was running long. The psychiatrist needed more time. Mom used this as an opportunity to gather the arriving relatives. My aunt, 2 cousins, mom's sister from out of state. I could hear her in the hallway, explaining how I'd had a stress-induced relapse and was crying out for attention. I had to choose. Give my full police statement now, while the detective was still in the building, or be there for Olivia's intake evaluation. Mom knew I'd choose my sister. She was counting on it. I disconnected my IV against the nurse's protests and stumbled toward the psychiatric wing. My legs felt like jelly. Mom followed at a distance, letting me struggle. She wanted the staff to see me like this. Unstable, impaired, desperate. Olivia sat in a small consultation room picking at her sleeve. The psychiatrist was asking about the injection. Olivia glanced at Mom through the window, then back at her hands. She mumbled that it was just vitamins, that Mom was really into wellness stuff. Her voice was flat, rehearsed. I tried to interrupt, to correct her, but the psychiatrist held up a hand. Family members could observe but not participate. I pressed my face against the glass, watching my sister lie to protect the woman who'd nearly unalived us both. The intake took 3 hours. 3 hours Mom used efficiently. By the time we returned to the main hospital, she'd told her version to every relative who'd arrived. They surrounded my bed with concerned faces and careful questions about my struggles. My aunt mentioned my phase in high school when I'd accused Mom of reading my diary. She said it gently, like she was trying to help, but the damage was done. The narrative was building. I'd always been dramatic, always made accusations. Mom's phone buzzed constantly. She showed my cousin her Instagram. 80,000 followers watching her support her daughter through a mental health crisis. The posts were already live. Photos of the hospital exterior, carefully worded captions about family struggles and unconditional love. Not a single mention of the injection. I grabbed my own phone to respond, to tell the truth. My comments were deleted within seconds. When I tried again, I found myself blocked. Mom's followers were already reporting my harassment. Their messages flooded my inbox, calling me ungrateful, attention-seeking, a disappointment to my poor mother. The security guard stopped by to check on the disturbance. Apparently, someone had reported me trying to photograph Mom's purse contents while she was in the bathroom. I hadn't been subtle enough. The guard's expression said everything. I looked like the problem here. Mom controlled everything. The health insurance that was keeping me in this bed. All of Olivia's medical passwords from years of being her caregiver. Every emergency contact form listed her name and only hers. I realized with growing horror how systematically she'd excluded me from my own sister's life. My hand tremor started during dinner. The kidney damage was causing small spasms. When I reached for water, the cup slipped, splashing across the bed. The visiting relatives exchanged glances. Mom rushed to clean it up, the devoted mother caring for her troubled child. Dad finally answered my texts. He offered to pay for a hotel for a week. Nothing more. His new wife didn't want the drama. His message was clear. I was on my own. The man who'd left us with Mom in the first place wasn't about to step up now. The hospital staff had started whispering. I caught fragments as they passed. The family with the eating disorder daughters, such a dedicated mother, sad situation. Mom's loud corridor conversations had painted the picture she wanted. The detective called back. Mom's story checked out. The local health store did sell B12 complex injections. It didn't matter that she'd never bought from there. The product existing was enough to create doubt. My best friend texted, asking if I was okay. She'd seen Mom's posts. Then, almost apologetically, she admitted she followed Mom's fitness account. Some of the recipes were actually good, she said. Even my own friends were part of Mom's audience. Mom's phone lit up with a notification. She smiled, showing me the screen. A screenshot of our old text conversation where I'd asked her for diet help 6 months ago. Out of context, it looked like I'd been begging for her intervention. She'd already sent it to the detective. A different nurse came by, one who seemed sympathetic. She whispered that she'd seen cases like this before. I felt a moment of hope until Mom appeared, thanking the nurse for her compassion during this difficult family crisis. The nurse's sympathy shifted to Mom. My relief at finding an ally became evidence of inappropriate affect. The psychiatric ward called. Olivia's 72-hour hold was confirmed. Mom was listed as her primary contact, medical proxy, and only approved visitor besides immediate family. Everything would go through her. The hospital room felt smaller with each passing hour. Mom had turned my accusation into evidence of my instability. My sister's testimony, the only thing that could save us, was locked behind 3 days of Mom's influence. Olivia would say whatever Mom needed her to say. I lay back against the pillows, kidney pain pulsing with each heartbeat. The IV dripped steadily, keeping me tethered to this bed while Mom rebuilt the narrative around me. 3 years of freedom, therapy, and healing, all of it crumbling under the weight of her manipulation. Tomorrow there would be more questions, more doubt, more carefully edited social media posts. Mom would continue playing the concerned parent while I looked increasingly unstable. But tonight, all I could do was watch the fluorescent lights flicker overhead and count the hours until Olivia's hold ended. Everything depended on my sister's testimony, and she was exactly where Mom wanted her. The fluorescent lights hummed as I shifted in the hospital bed, watching Mom scroll through her phone in the corner chair. She'd been there all night, occasionally glancing up to check if I was awake. Each time our eyes met, she'd smile that practiced smile she used for her videos. Morning brought a parade of medical staff. The nephrologist examined my charts while Mom hovered nearby, asking detailed questions about my kidney function. She took notes on her phone, probably planning her next post about being a devoted caregiver. The doctor explained I'd need follow-up appointments for months. Mom immediately offered to drive me to every single one. My ex-boyfriend John appeared in the doorway carrying coffee. My stomach dropped. Mom had already gotten to him. She rushed over, taking the cup he'd brought for her and touching his arm gratefully. They spoke in hushed tones near the nurse's station. I caught fragments, Mom explaining how I'd been struggling, how she was worried about my mental state. John kept glancing at me with that same pitying look everyone else had. The police detective returned with more questions. This time he brought a colleague. They'd reviewed the security footage from the night I was brought in. The grainy video showed Mom disposing of something in the medical waste bin, but the quality was too poor to identify what. Mom explained again about safely disposing of the B12 syringe. The detectives exchanged looks but said nothing. I tried explaining about the injection again, speaking slowly and clearly despite the medication fog. The detective asked why I'd said, "I want to make her pay," to the nurse. Mom's eyes widened in mock surprise. She hadn't known about that comment. The detective's partner made notes while Mom tearfully explained how I'd threatened her before, how this wasn't the first time I'd made accusations. My phone buzzed with notifications. Someone had found my old Instagram account, the one I'd deleted years ago. Screenshots were circulating, posts from when I was 15, praising Mom for helping me get healthy. "Mom's helping me transform my life," one caption read. The date stamps showed it was during the worst of the starvation. Out of context, it looked like gratitude. In reality, I'd been forced to write those posts. Olivia's group therapy session was happening 2 floors below. Through the hospital's family portal, I could see the notes being updated in real time. Mom had access too, of course. The therapist documented Olivia saying she felt I'd always resented the attention she received. The phrasing was too polished, too much like Mom's own words, but the therapist just typed it up as fact. Security footage from earlier in the week surfaced. It showed me near the hospital pharmacy hours before my collapse. I'd been visiting a friend who worked there, but the timestamp and location raised questions. The detective asked if I'd had access to any medications. Mom suggested maybe I'd injected myself to frame her. The accusation was so absurd I couldn't even respond. Adult Protective Services arrived to interview Olivia about her eating disorder. Without her cooperation, they explained, they couldn't investigate Mom's role. Through the window, I watched Olivia pick at her hospital bracelet while the social worker asked questions. Mom sat beside her, holding her hand. Every time Olivia started to speak, Mom would squeeze gently. A reminder, a warning. That evening, I discovered Mom had left her tablet logged into her email. My fingers shook as I quickly accessed her search history before she returned. The searches made my blood run cold. Safe dose diet supplements, metabolism boosters, legal gray area, daughter weight gain concern, dates going back months before she'd called me home. This had been planned. I managed to download several files to my phone before Mom returned from the cafeteria. Old videos, receipts, correspondence with supplement suppliers, evidence that she'd been preparing this intervention for months, but I needed more. I needed proof of intent, not just poor judgment. Mom's Instagram engagement patterns became clear as I scrolled through her analytics. Every spike in followers, every surge in ad revenue, they all coincided with posts about her daughter's struggles. Hospitalizations were gold mines. Breakdowns were profitable. She'd built a business model on our suffering. My college counselor called Mom, not me. Apparently there were concerns about statements I'd made during therapy sessions. Something about sometimes wanting to hurt my mom, taken completely out of context from a discussion about normal anger in abusive relationships. Mom's voice carried as she spoke to the counselor, expressing how worried she'd been about my violent tendencies. The extended family gathered for an intervention-style meeting in the hospital's family conference room. I wasn't invited initially. Mom said it would be too stressful for me, but I wheeled my IV stand down the hallway anyway. 20 relatives sat in a circle, Mom at the center, explaining how she needed their support during this difficult time. I tried recording the meeting on my phone, holding it low and subtle, but Mom spotted it immediately. Her face crumpled into tears as she asked why I was recording her pain. The room turned to stare at me. My uncle stood up, said I was making everything worse. My aunt suggested I should focus on getting better instead of causing more drama. Olivia's discharge planning began. The social worker explained she needed a stable environment. The options were Mom's house or a state facility. Olivia's face went pale at the mention of the state facility. She'd choose Mom. She always chose Mom. And Mom would have complete control over her recovery. The nurse who'd witnessed the injection that night pulled me aside during shift change. She'd been thinking about what she saw, but when I pressed for details, she backpedaled. She hadn't seen enough to be certain. Hospital administration had been asking questions. She couldn't afford to lose her job. Her disappointment was visible as she walked away. That night, I found Mom sleeping in my childhood bed at home. She'd posted a photo of herself wearing my old goal weight jeans, the ones from when I was dangerously underweight. The caption talked about holding space for her daughter's return to health. She'd even sprayed my old perfume, the same scent I'd worn in high school when I was dying. Mom visited the next morning with an offer. She'd forget everything if I agreed to family therapy and moved back home where she could monitor my recovery. She presented it like a gift, like she was being generous. When I refused, she sighed and said I was choosing revenge over over my sister's well-being. She'd make sure the family knew that too. My memories of the injection started feeling unreliable. The kidney failure had affected my cognitive function, the doctors explained. I remembered being in the living room when it happened, but security footage showed me in the kitchen moments before. The injection still happened. My collapsed kidneys were proof, but the details were fuzzy. Mom used every inconsistency to build her case. I discovered Olivia had been keeping a digital food diary on a hidden app. Months of entries documenting Mom's pressure, the forced weigh-ins, the punishment for gaining even half a pound. But Olivia would never give me the password. She was too scared of Mom finding out. Going through the evidence I'd gathered, I found videos where Mom genuinely seemed to be helping. Clips of her coaxing Olivia to eat during refeeding, holding her hair during purges, crying real tears when Olivia's weight dropped dangerously low. The situation was more complex than pure evil. Mom's sickness was wrapped in genuine fear for our lives. My grandmother arrived from out of state. She offered to let me stay in her garage apartment, but with conditions. No drama at family dinners, no discussing the situation with younger cousins, no posting about family matters online. It was shelter, but it came with silence. I started documenting everything obsessively. Every interaction, every comment, every post Mom made. My friends grew uncomfortable when I'd screenshot our conversations or ask them to verify timeline details. They felt like they were being investigated. One by one, they stopped responding to my messages. At the gym, I recognized one of Mom's supplement suppliers. My heart pounded as I approached him, pretending to be interested in metabolism boosters. He mentioned special orders, custom blends, things that weren't exactly FDA approved but were popular in the fitness community. He remembered Mom, said she was one of his best customers, always asking about maximum safe doses. Before Mom realized her old tablet was still logged into her cloud storage, I downloaded years of photos and messages. The evidence painted a picture of escalating obsession. Photos of us sleeping, with our stomachs circled in red. Messages to other fitness influencers about her transformation project. She'd been documenting our bodies like we were experiments. Dad's ex-girlfriend reached out unexpectedly. She'd kept the old custody evaluation from their divorce. It mentioned Mom's controlling behavior around food, concerns about the children's weight fluctuations, but it was framed as maternal anxiety, not abuse. Still, it showed a pattern going back years. Fighting for justice meant sacrificing my health. I missed my follow-up nephrology appointment while meeting with lawyers. My kidney function was deteriorating, but I couldn't stop. The doctor noted my non-compliance in my medical record, another mark against my credibility. My savings account drained quickly. Hotel rooms, legal consultations, medical bills not covered by Mom's insurance. Meanwhile, Mom monetized our family crisis. Her healing journey content was more popular than ever. She'd found a way to profit from destroying us. The confrontation at Olivia's treatment center was inevitable. I showed up during family therapy, demanding to participate. The therapist said I was disrupting the therapeutic environment. Security escorted me out while Olivia watched from the window. Mom held her as she cried. I was banned from future visits. My remote job put me on performance probation. Too many missed meetings, too many distracted days. I couldn't afford to lose the income, but I also couldn't focus on spreadsheets while my sister was being brainwashed. My supervisor suggested I take unpaid leave to deal with my personal issues. Some nights, I slept in my car rather than face my grandmother's questions. The garage apartment felt like another cage, full of family photos and memories of when things were normal. Mom posted Instagram stories from my childhood bedroom, redecorating it for my eventual return. My grandfather called, begging me to stop the war. He said Olivia needed peace to recover, not more conflict. I was making her worse, he insisted. The family was tired of taking sides. Why couldn't I just let it go and focus on healing? Every question I asked about Olivia's treatment backfired. Her favorite nurse was reassigned after I pressed for information about her medication. The nurse's disappointment was visible during shift change. She'd wanted to help, but couldn't risk her license. The nurse's partner confronted me in the hospital parking lot, asked why I was dragging innocent people into my family drama. Their relationship was strained because of the stress I'd caused. Another casualty of my quest for justice. I kept pushing despite the mounting losses. A fellow patient suggested that maybe Mom had just gone too far trying to help. Maybe she wasn't evil, just misguided. Even other victims doubted victims. The gaslighting was everywhere. To maintain credibility about the forced consumption, I had to admit my own history. Yes, I'd bought diet pills from Mom's supplier before. Yes, I'd participated in the toxic culture. But that didn't mean I deserved to have my kidneys destroyed. The admission made me look complicit. Evidence surfaced, showing I'd ignored warning signs while away at college. Olivia's Instagram posts had grown increasingly concerning, but I'd been too focused on my own healing to notice. Why hadn't I seen what was happening? The guilt was crushing. Mom's lawyer filed a motion for a temporary restraining order. She claimed I was exhibiting a pattern of harassment. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. More legal fees, more time away from work, more evidence of my obsession. Through everything, I began to understand Mom's twisted logic. She genuinely believed she was saving us from her own past. The obesity that drove Dad away, the loneliness of being the fat kid. In her mind, transformation was love. Control was care. She couldn't distinguish between helping and harming. Her motivation was a toxic mix of financial desperation after the divorce and a distorted belief system. The influencer income had started as survival and morphed into something darker, but understanding her didn't excuse her. It just made everything more complicated. To prove the pattern of control, I had to expose Olivia's psychiatric history. Every hospitalization, every sewer slide attempt, every intervention. I was betraying my sister's privacy for the sake of justice. The protective little sister I'd once been was gone, replaced by someone who'd use any means necessary. Mom's account manager was chatty after a few drinks at a conference. She mentioned the weird supplement orders, the requests for before and after photo editing, the strategic timing of crisis posts. But she wouldn't provide an official statement. Mom paid her too well. The restraining order hearing was denied, but the victory felt hollow. I watched Mom cry real tears at Olivia's therapy graduation. Despite everything, we both wanted Olivia to survive. Our methods were different, but the fear of losing her was the same. Mom's defamation countersuit gained traction. My social media posts did look obsessive when presented out of context. Screenshots of my documentation efforts made me appear unstable. Her lawyer was building a case that I was the real danger to the family. Everything hinged on Olivia's eventual testimony. Would she support Mom's version of events or tell the truth about the systematic abuse? She was scheduled for discharge in 2 weeks. 2 weeks for Mom to solidify her control. My former kindness came back to haunt me. Mom's assistant, who I'd always treated well, remained loyal to her steady employer. She testified that Mom was demanding but caring, that the supplement orders were for the whole family's health. She needed the job to pay for her kids' daycare. Another person trapped in Mom's web. The local fitness community split down the middle. Some had always felt something was off about Mom's content. Others defended her dedication to her daughter's health. The controversy only drove more traffic to her platforms. The detective explained the legal reality. They needed clear evidence of intent to harm, not just misguided parenting. Bad judgment wasn't attempted unaliving. The distinction felt meaningless when my kidneys were failing, but the law was specific. I reached out to Mom's former best friend, who'd cut contact years ago. She wasn't surprised by the situation, but wouldn't get involved. She'd seen the signs of Mom's escalating behavior, but had chosen to protect her own family by walking away. The friend did share one crucial detail. Mom's supplement supplier had warned her about dosage dangers. Mom had dismissed the concerns, insisting she knew her daughter's bodies better than anyone. It proved knowledge, but framed it as negligence rather than attempted unaliving. Late one night, I found the smoking firearm in Mom's own Instagram drafts, posts she'd written but never published, documenting my weight gain before the intervention. She'd been building the narrative for months, creating the crisis she'd later solve. The timestamps were damning. Gathering evidence had cost me everything. Extended family felt caught in the middle and chose neutrality, which meant choosing Mom. I'd alienated friends, lost professional opportunities, destroyed my health further, but I couldn't stop. The hardest truth to accept was my own complicity. I'd edited her videos, grown her platform, enabled the very system that destroyed us. I'd helped create the monster that nearly unalived me. The guilt was almost unbearable, but I committed to the full truth, including my participation in our family's toxic dynamic. If I wanted justice, I had to own my part in it. The victim and the enabler were the same person. Mom's overconfidence became her weakness. She posted about tough love while I was still in the ICU. The timestamp proved she knew I was hospitalized when she wrote it. Her need for content overrode her caution. I presented the evidence to the detective without editorializing. The pattern spoke for itself. Escalating control, dangerous substances, financial motivation, lack of remorse. His expression shifted as he reviewed everything. This was more than family drama. The case moved forward as reckless endangerment rather than attempted unaliving. It was still serious, still criminal, but more realistic given the circumstances. Mom would face consequences, just not the ones I'd initially wanted. As Olivia's discharge date approached, both Mom and I prepared for the testimony that would determine everything. The family was fracturing, choosing sides or withdrawing entirely. The truth was coming, but at what cost? My kidney function continued deteriorating. The stress of fighting for justice was literally unaliving me, but I couldn't stop now. Too much had been sacrificed. Too much was at stake. Mom's mask was slipping in public. The pressure of maintaining her image while facing legal scrutiny was taking its toll. Her posts became erratic, her editing sloppy. The perfect mother facade was cracking. I moved forward with the criminal complaint, knowing it would destroy any chance of family reconciliation. Some bridges had to be burned to save the people on the other side, even if they hated me for it. The final pieces were falling into place. Evidence gathered, patterns documented, witnesses identified. Everything depended on Olivia finding the courage to speak her truth, and she was days away from discharge, from Mom's complete control, from the moment that would define all our futures. The treatment center's family meeting room smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. I arrived early, positioning myself where I could see both entrances. The therapists, relatives, and caseworker filed in one by one. Mom entered last, phone clutched in her hand, checking follower counts between greetings. The seating arrangements revealed everything. Mom's supporters clustered on one side, the few neutral parties scattered awkwardly in between, and me alone near the door. Olivia shuffled in wearing oversized sweatpants that still hung loose on her frame. She avoided eye contact with everyone, focusing on a spot on the floor. The caseworker began outlining discharge options while Mom's fingers twitched toward her phone every few seconds. I watched my sister's hands shake as she picked at her cuticles. The truth emerged slowly, like air bubbles rising through thick liquid. When asked about her weight loss methods, Olivia's voice cracked. She glanced at Mom, then at her lap, then finally admitted Mom sometimes gave her things to help her lose weight faster. The room went silent except for Mom's sharp intake of breath. Mom's assistant, Catherine, had been subpoenaed. She sat rigidly in the witness chair at the courthouse the next morning, explaining how she'd purchased supplements for Mom, but genuinely believed they were vitamins. Her voice trembled as she described the orders, the strange requests, the increasing quantities. She kept glancing at the door like she expected Mom to burst through it. The judge's expression remained neutral as he ordered comprehensive substance testing for all parties and supervised visitation only pending investigation results. Mom's hands gripped her purse so tightly her knuckles went white. I submitted to the blood draw willingly, watching the vials fill with evidence of my kidney damage. 3 days later, the toxicology report arrived. The substance in my system wasn't vitamin B12. It was a dangerous dangerous diet substance commonly abused in eating disorder communities, available through gray market channels. The toxicologist explained how it worked, why it caused kidney failure, how lucky I was to survive. Mom's lawyer requested a recess. The evidence painted a complex picture. This wasn't simple evil, but medical child abuse tangled with family trauma and financial pressure. The prosecutor explained the charges carefully, not black and white attempted unaliving, but still criminal. Mom's reality distortion became clearer with each piece of evidence presented. During Mom's breakdown in court, she revealed she genuinely couldn't distinguish between helping and harming. She sobbed about saving us from her past, from obesity, from dad leaving. Her distorted worldview had twisted love into control, care into abuse. The judge ordered a psychiatric evaluation. 2 months passed before the sentencing hearing. The prosecutor asked me to prepare a victim impact statement. I spent weeks writing and rewriting, trying to capture the complexity of loving someone who'd nearly unalived me. The final version was 3 pages of careful balance between accountability and compassion. Standing in the courtroom, I made my choice. Instead of requesting maximum prison time, I asked for mental health treatment and probation. Mom was sick, not evil. She needed help, not just punishment. The words felt like swallowing glass, but they were true. The judge's ruling reflected the case's complexity. Mom received 2 years probation with mandatory therapy, loss of her social media platforms pending investigation, and no unsupervised contact with anyone under 25. The protective order was comprehensive and non-negotiable. Olivia entered a step-down program at a different facility. Without Mom's constant presence, she began the slow process of reclaiming her relationship with food and her body. Progress wasn't linear. Some days she'd call crying about feeling fat, others she'd manage 3 meals without panic. The family fracture was immediate and permanent. Some relatives insisted Mom meant well, that we were ungrateful daughters destroying a loving mother. Others admitted they'd seen warning signs but hadn't known how to intervene. Holiday dinners would never happen again. The extended family split into camps that couldn't coexist. I started rebuilding with the pieces I had left. The kidney damage was permanent. I'd need monitoring for life, medications to manage function, careful attention to diet and hydration. The PTSD diagnosis came with its own challenges. Nightmares about syringes, panic attacks in medical settings, hypervigilance around food. My job eventually terminated my employment during unpaid leave. The savings account sat empty. But slowly, a different kind of support network emerged. Other survivors of family abuse reached out. Online communities understood the complexity of loving someone who hurt you. Some family was lost, but a chosen family grew. Mom's supervised treatment sessions happened weekly at a court-appointed facility. Reports indicated she was participating but struggling to accept responsibility. Her therapist noted persistent delusions about helping her daughters. Change, if it came at all, would take years. 6 months after the trial, I attended a medical abuse awareness conference. Not as a speaker or advocate, I wasn't ready for that, but as someone learning to live with what happened. The other attendees understood the strange grief of losing a parent who was still alive. Olivia and I met for coffee at a neutral location, our first unsupervised visit in months. She ordered a latte with whole milk, a small victory. We didn't talk about Mom or weight or the trial. Instead, we discussed her new art therapy class, my search for remote work, the book she was reading. The legal system had acknowledged the truth, even if not all relatives did. Mom was in court-ordered therapy, stripped of her platform and influence. Both sisters were learning that healing wasn't linear, that some days were harder than others, that survival was its own form of success. Recovery meant different things on different days. Sometimes it was managing 3 meals. Sometimes it was taking kidney medication on schedule. Sometimes it was just getting through a family gathering where half the relatives thought we'd overreacted. Progress was measured in small victories and daily choices. The story didn't end with justice or revenge or reconciliation. It ended with 3 broken people trying to rebuild in different ways. Mom in mandatory therapy, grappling with her distorted reality. Olivia in recovery, reclaiming her body and choices. Me learning to live with permanent health consequences while building a life free from manipulation. Healing wasn't linear, but it was possible. Even if the kidneys never fully recovered. Even if the family never reunited. Even if some days the anger and grief felt overwhelming. Survival itself was an act of resistance. Living was its own form of justice. The platforms that had enabled Mom's abuse were gone. The cycles of control were broken. 2 sisters were free to heal at their own pace, in their own ways. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was a real one. Sometimes that's all you can ask for.